Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patrons, KR and Charles H. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. First up today, I will not bury the lead like the Financial Times did, but there is no deal to be had here. Tesla had been in talks with Glencore to potentially take up to a 20% stake in the company, but no deal has been reached. Many people know Glencore produces cobalt, nickel, copper, and it's also one of the world's largest battery recyclers. You may remember back in 2020 when Tesla said it would source cobalt for both Berlin and Shanghai from Glencore in the DRC. And when it comes to cobalt, the DRC supplies around 2/3 of the global supply. In May of this year, we learned that Glencore entered into partnership with Li-Cycle, one of North America's leading lithium-ion battery recyclers. Glencore invested $200 million into Li-Cycle, and Li-Cycle is now a preferred partner of Glencore when it comes to battery recycling. So clearly, Glencore wants to get its hand more and more into the EV space. However, part of the trepidation for Tesla with this deal was apparently the fact that Glencore is one of the world's largest producers and exporters of coal, so potentially not a great look for Tesla just yet. You can look at this in two different ways. The first is maybe there's no deal now, but in the future, as Glencore continues to clean up its operations, maybe produces and exports less coal as it does more with the battery supply chain, then maybe Tesla and Glencore can have a deal in the future. Or two, because these talks have gone on now for over a year, you can surmise that Tesla knows everything it wants to about Glencore. No deal will be done, meaning it could increase the chances Tesla has to do some of this mining and sourcing of raw materials more on its own. Moving on, over the weekend we learned that Giga Texas has now produced 20,000 Model Ys to date, so let's put this into context. Before we do, I think it's very fitting that in the background you see only red, white, and blue Model Ys. So here we have a chart put together using data from Troy Teslike and Tesla's official account, the number of days per factory to reach 20,000 units produced. Of course, Shanghai did it in the shortest amount of time. It took them 100 days, setting the bar seemingly too high. Next, it took Austin 151 days to go from 0 to 20,000, and it took Berlin 187 days. I think it's also important to point out that in Austin, the first 10,000 units took 108 days, but then the second 10,000 units took 43 days. Now remember, this is not a perfect comparison because Shanghai started with the Model 3, whereas Austin and Berlin are starting with basically a new version of the Model Y using all of the new technology, the Giga castings, the structural pack, etc. But most importantly, as we can learn from this basic data point, the ramp at Giga Austin is finally starting to take shape as the second 10,000 units took half the time. Even more importantly, we learned on the recent Q3 call, Tesla in Austin should be in the neighborhood of a 2,000 unit per week run rate. Not that they've reached that sustainably in a weekly period, but there have been days here and there where if you extrapolate that to a week, it would be around 2,000 per week. There are, of course, myriad reasons why Austin may be ramping faster than Berlin, not the least of which, though, Austin can be better supported by Fremont and Nevada. Just geographically, they're closer in proximity, whereas Berlin is somewhat on an island. If you're relying on 2170 cells, which they are right now, those are coming from Giga Shanghai. They just have farther to travel. But again, there are thousands of small different reasons contributing to this discrepancy, but I think one of the bigger ones is definitely the new paint shop at Giga Berlin. Remember, this is world-class, revolutionary, different. Austin does not have this type of paint shop. That has been reported to have caused some delays when it comes to production. Next up, over the weekend, we had an awesome conversation between Lex Fridman and Andrej Karpathy, the former director of AI at Tesla. This conversation was over 3.5 hours, so I'm just going to give you the main takeaways that are pertinent to Tesla. Lex asked about Tesla removing sensors, doubling down on vision only. Andrej said sensors are potentially a liability when considering the entire suite. You need an entire supply chain to procure the sensors. There can be problems with them, they might need replaced, and they can hold back the production line. Teams have to write firmware and you have to fuse them into the system, so it bloats a lot of the production process. When you consider the full cost of a sensor, it can be a liability, and you have to be sure that it's giving you extremely useful information. In Tesla's case, the delta between using it and not using it was not massive, so it's not useful. And just hear me on this. As a Tesla customer, you're free to be upset that certain features may be limited for a time without the ultrasonic sensors. But at the end of the day, Tesla is going to do what it thinks is best in the long run, and I do still find it comical how many internet warriors think they know better than Elon and the former director of AI at Tesla. Anyway, Lex also asked about LiDAR versus camera vision, and Andrej said the real debate should be over the data collection system. Whether you have enough varying data is far more important than if you have LiDAR or not, which is just another sensor. Andrej shared similar thoughts on LiDAR, that it does not offer extra information, it's extremely costly, it has all kinds of problems, you have to worry about it, you have to calibrate it, it creates bloat and entropy in the code and data pipelines, and you have to be sure that, again, you really need it. Andrej said he thinks some of the other companies that are using LiDAR are eventually going to drop it. When it comes to other companies using HD maps and constraining the geographies they can operate in, Andrej said of course this is not scalable and they pre-map all environments down to a centimeter accuracy, but they have to continually update these maps. So the question needs to be asked, how are you going to maintain a centimeter level accurate map for Earth? This creates an enormous dependency. Andrej said it's a crutch, it's a distraction, and it dilutes the team from focusing on what is essentially a computer vision problem. The one takeaway Andrej had from working with Elon was his ability to efficiently run an organization. And when it comes to Andrej leaving Tesla, he confirmed his role had turned more managerial and the team was able to operate autonomously. He just wanted to get back to what he enjoys most, working on the technical side of things and refocusing on AGI. But we did get this.
Obviously, I love the company a lot, and I love Elon, I love Tesla. I want, so it was hard to leave. I love the team, basically. But yeah, I think I would be potentially interested in revisiting it, maybe coming back at some point, working in Optimus, working in AGI at Tesla. I think Tesla is going to do incredible things. It's basically it's a massive, large-scale robotics kind of company with a ton of in-house talent for doing really incredible things. Yeah. And I think humanoid robots are going to be amazing. I think autonomous transportation is going to be amazing. All this is happening at Tesla. So I think it's just a really amazing organization. So being part of it and helping it along, I think was I enjoyed that a lot.
And listening to Andrej's tone when he was talking about Tesla, it seemed honestly more likely than not that he will come back to Tesla in the future for a part 2. And on Twitter, Elon said, of course, Andrej is welcome to come back to Tesla anytime. Just a fun fact, Andrej also said that he is a night owl by nature, which makes me, in a weird way, feel a little bit better about my night owl tendencies. Next up, no explanation needed, just have a look and a listen to this video. Here we have Panasonic saying it will break ground on this brand new $4 billion battery factory that should have an initial capacity of 30 gigawatt hours next month. I'll be honest, I've read a lot about what's out there on this subject, and there's some mixed reporting going on whether this factory will be building 2170s, 4680s, or both. I would presume eventually both. Maybe they'll start ramping just with one, potentially 2170s. We do know that Panasonic has been working on a 4680 prototype over in Japan, so maybe if that's ready, that will ramp in tandem with 2170s. As far as I can tell, we just can't know for sure right now, but what we do know is this factory will, at least in part, be to provide Giga Austin with cells. Mass production should not be expected until March 2025. Next up, we finally got a new upload from Tony Seba and Rethink X on his YouTube channel. It's been almost a year now since his previous presentation. If you're not familiar with Tony, basically he's been talking about market disruption, S-curves, technology adoption for a long time. He's been right now for a long time, while most people have been ridiculing him, criticizing him, saying that his predictions are going to be way off, and each passing year, they keep proving him right. So the major point here is many different technologies are converging at a time where the costs fall enough to make new technology viable. Think about the iPhone. The incumbents like Motorola, BlackBerry, they never saw it coming. They basically dismissed the smartphone altogether. Now we know the smartphone caught on and took off and opened up the possibility space for ride-hailing companies, which led to Uber having more bookings than the United States taxi industry in just 7 years. These disruptions in foundational sectors like transportation or energy happen on an S-curve. It is not linear. This is not conjecture. It's based in data for all of the previous transformations that we've seen over the last 100 years. Look at the car market coming from horses. The market share for cars went from 11% to 81% in just 10 years, despite building new industries like auto and oil from scratch, building roads, fighting World War I, fighting the influenza pandemic. You get the picture. We could go on and on here, but just look at these charts. Major disruptions form X-curves. The new technology adoption rises quickly, and the incumbent technology quickly falls off in 10 to 15 years. And if anything, today, these curves are actually accelerating. The IEA has been forecasting solar photovoltaic deployment now for 30 years, and they've continued to get it wrong year after year, projecting linear growth. And I think it's crucial to understand that the old tech that's being displaced or disrupted also follows an S-curve, but of course it's inverted. The point, they're not going to fall off slowly with time. There's going to hit this breaking point where the old technology falls off rather quickly.
A way to think about it is that a butterfly is not a faster caterpillar. It's a new system. It's a new life form, if you will. And if you think that you can add wings to a caterpillar and you have a butterfly, well, that's what a lot of incumbents think, right? But again, a butterfly is not a caterpillar with wings.
Now let's switch to a few rapid fire items, and to designate the transition, we'll now shift to a sound. I just want to say people are making a much bigger deal of this than they should be. Any smart advertiser is going to pause advertising on a platform that's undergoing massive overhaul. Oh, this is just GM being prudent with its marketing budget. This has nothing to do with GM trying to stick it to Elon. How do I know that? Because this decision will hurt GM far more than it would ever hurt Elon or Twitter. Honestly, the writing on the wall for this one has been there for some time. Stellantis has had a joint venture for selling Jeep in China. Sales have not been going well, so they're done and going to file bankruptcy. However, this one is really interesting and possibly a foreshadowing of things to come, because this joint venture model for Chinese automakers and other foreign automakers was really just so China could learn what the rest of the world was doing so they could improve faster, closing that gap. Fast forward to now, and many of these Chinese automakers feel like they've already closed that gap, if not exceeded some of these other foreign automakers, so we should expect more of these joint partnerships to eventually dissolve. And something that oftentimes goes way overlooked, remember, Tesla is the only global automaker that was granted a waiver to produce cars in China without a joint venture. Here we have some layoff news from two different companies, again in a sign of things to come. When you pair a potential 2023 recession with legacy OEMs need to transition its entire workforce to having EV skills that we know are very different than ICE, there will be much shakeup to come. Stellantis has offered voluntary buyouts to some of its 13,000 US salaried employees. Workers aged 55 or older who have been with the company now for more than 10 years are eligible. They said it's part of our transformation to become a sustainable tech mobility company and the market leader in low emission vehicles. Everybody on the planet wanting to be the market leader, only one can hold that spot. On a similar note, Ford has now changed its policy policy for how it deals with underperforming employees. Basically, it's going to start cutting ties with employees that don't meet expectations. Essentially, taking a page directly out of Elon's playbook, one that's get on board or get out. This will focus on employees with 8 or more years of service and whom the company has identified as demonstrating a pattern of declining performance. These employees now have the option of taking the severance rather than enrolling in the enhancement plan, which can take 4 to 6 weeks. Those who instead choose the enhancement plan but fail to improve will not be eligible for any severance. Sticking with Ford, this should come as no surprise, but Ford has lowered the prices of the Mach in China between 5 and 10%. On average, across the board, cars are down in the neighborhood of $3,000, and right now, 2 of these models are eligible for the Chinese subsidy. And last up for today, also from Ford, they are giving their dealers another month to decide if they want to go forward with all of this new infrastructure, the chargers, and the training to sell EVs. The deadline was October 31st, now it's December 2nd. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Please like the video if you did, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.